At this point, we fully automated our switch between development and production and made the ability of concatenating and minifying something that takes just a couple of seconds instead of an error-prone and mind-numbing 5 minutes or so. So now we've done all this, but we haven't gone back into the browser and actually tested out our site to make sure this is working. So let's give that a shot. I'm going to go back to the browser. I'm going to go to our local host and I'm going to refresh. So for the most part, this looks okay, except the font is a bit off, and you can tell that we're not using the right icons in certain places. As you scroll down, you can see more of the issue with our font icons here, and the sans serif font seems to persist. So what's going on? Now this can be a little hard to track down, but what we can do is go back to our automation and start taking out certain steps to see where the problem is occurring. It seems most likely that it's a CSS problem, so the issue is going to come into play when things get concatenated or when they get minified. We can bypass the minification by scrolling down here and removing the CSS min here, but we also need to change what we're injecting here for production to not use the minified version. So let's take out the .min.css here. Let's save this and go back to our command line and run grunt prod again in order to use the non-minified version of the CSS. All right, now let's refresh in the browser, and we still see the font problem. So likely the issue is not with minification. Now if we eliminate the concatenation, which we can do simply by running grunt instead of grunt prod, this will pull in our base JavaScript and CSS files. I'll go back to the browser and refresh. Everything looks good. So the problem is with the concatenation. If we go back to our grunt file, and we look at our options for the concatenation up here, you can see that we've set a separator to a semicolon. Now if we look at our non-minified version of our concatenated CSS, which would be our allcss.css, and we scroll to where the delineation is between two different files, you can see that we're adding this semicolon between the files, and the semicolon appears before the first line of the next file. So if we scroll down a bit more past the flex slider styles, past our normalized styles, and we get to our styles.css, you see the semicolon here in front of our font face, which means that font awesome isn't being established as a font we can use. If we remove this semicolon though, it would work. So let's go back to our grunt file. Let's undo the removal of the minification. So I'm just going to click Command Z or Control Z until we get our CSS min back in our task for production and our .min back here in our injector. And let's experiment by just removing the separator here as an option for concatenation. Let's go back to the command line and let's run grunt prod. All right, everything ran. Let's jump back to the browser and refresh. Okay, so now we have our correct icons and we're not running into problems with the sans serif. I'm going to scroll down just to make sure everything else looks good. It looks like our JavaScript is working just fine. Our CSS is working good. Okay,